I pledge to every citizen of our land that I will be president for all Americans.
An historic presidential race ends with stunning results. Donald Trump, now the president-elect.
Donald Trump is going to be our president. We owe him an open mind and the chance to lead.
And Hillary Clinton is a gracious loser as she concedes the race to Trump. Donald Trump will become the 45th president of the United States after sweeping nearly every swing state in the country. The results shocking many in the political establishment and pollsters as well.
Yeah, most polls going into election night had Hillary Clinton with a comfortable lead, leaving many who followed the race shocked as those votes came in. Well, now after a long and divisive election, President-elect Trump says it's time to work together.
For those who have chosen not to support me in the past, of which there were a few people, I'm reaching out to you for your guidance and your help so that we can work together and unify our great country.
Mr. Trump vowed to work with all Americans, whether they supported him or not.
Working together, we will begin the urgent task of rebuilding our nation and renewing the American dream. I've spent my entire life in business looking at the untapped potential in projects and in people all over the world. That is now what I want to do for our country.
Well, the president-elect went through a list of things he hopes to accomplish, including doubling the economic growth rate, rebuilding the country's infrastructure, dismantling Obamacare, and taking care of veterans. He also vowed to use his business savvy to get all of that done.
Well, Sine, as the votes began to roll in last night, it became clear that Donald Trump had tapped into the frustration so many Americans felt. Just one look here at the electoral map, and you can see it shows so much of the South and the Midwest was supporting Trump, and he was even able to flip some traditionally Democratic states, and his win was fueled by votes in small towns and in rural areas. Fox 5's Deidre Dukes is live for us in Upson County, where she talked to some of those voters, and Deidre, Trump won there by really a 2-to-1 margin.
Joining you live from Thomaston in Upson County, talked to a lot of Trump supporters here, and they all said the same thing, that they really like Trump's economic policies. They like the idea that he plans to bring jobs to the U.S., to create jobs here, and they hope that it will really revitalize their local economy. Donald Trump's road to the White House led through rural communities like Georgia's Upson County. With more than 11,000 ballots cast, residents here voted 2-to-1 for the GOP candidate, mirroring election returns seen in rural areas and small towns across the country.
For our community, I think that we see a future. We heard the things that we wanted to hear again. He knows that we're hurting, and he's going to help us.
Longtime Thomaston resident Kayla Thompson and her friends voted for Trump, encouraged in part by his economic plan, which includes creating 25 million jobs over the next decade, and what that might mean for their own families.
He's going to create jobs. There's no jobs where we live. You have to go out of state to work.
Thomaston was hit hard when the old textile and tire cord mills shut down more than a decade ago, putting thousands out of work.
Many good people around here, especially in this town, in this county, they want a good job. They want, and I think President-elect Trump will be the one that can help bring some of this back to America.
Thomaston Mayor John Stallings is an ardent Trump supporter. He believes Trump will make good on his campaign promise to repeal NAFTA and bring jobs back to the U.S., back to economically depressed communities.
So we've had high unemployment rates here, and I think having someone in the presidency that's a businessman who knows this and that's mentioned doing away with NAFTA, maybe bringing these jobs back from overseas and put some of these people back to work, and that's what people want.
Even those I spoke with here today in this community who did not vote for Trump said that they do hope that a Trump victory will lead to job growth here, much needed job growth. And that's latest here in Upson County. I'm Deidre Dukes, Fox 5 News.
All right, Deidre, thanks. Well, much of Trump's support came from rural areas like where Deidre is. He still had plenty of support in metro Atlanta. Drivers on Georgia 400 saw some of that support today. This Trump-Pence sign and an American flag hanging off an overpass at Lenox Road. Sine?
Well, Tom, for many Hillary Clinton supporters, this sums up how they feel about the election results. Protesters outside the Capitol lit a Donald Trump hat on fire after he was declared the winner. And in California, hundreds of students from 3 East Bay high schools staged a massive walkout. This was to protest Donald Trump's election win. Crowds at all 3 schools chanted, "Not my president," and staged a sit-in right outside their campus buildings. Well, Hillary Clinton didn't address supporters until late this morning. She spoke at the New York hotel, which is about a half-mile from where she planned a celebration. The New Yorker. She reminded supporters that despite her loss, they still have a constitutional responsibility to uphold.
So let's do all we can to keep advancing the causes and values we all hold dear, making our economy work for everyone, not just those at the top, protecting our country and protecting our planet, and breaking down all the barriers that hold any American back from achieving their dreams.
Well, she also had a special message for all the little girls who look up to her and who hoped that she'd become the first female president.
And to all the little girls who are watching this, never doubt that you are valuable and powerful and deserving of every chance and opportunity in the world to pursue and achieve your own dreams.
Clinton says losing the election is painful, and it will be for a long time. Tom?
Well, Sinead, that pain is also felt by many of Clinton's supporters. We kept hearing the same 2 words over and over again: bitter disappointment. Fox 5's Portia Bruner watched Clinton's concession speech with some of those disappointed supporters in DeKalb County. And Portia, one woman you spoke to even called in sick to work today because of the election.
Yeah, she told me she was just so upset, so disappointed. She'd watched the results all night and still woke up this morning with a heavy heart and just feeling really disappointed. It's a sentiment we heard from a lot of Hillary Clinton supporters here in downtown Decatur. This Decatur woman asked us not to use her name, but she is so upset about the election of Donald Trump. She says she took a day off from work just to clear her head, not to mention her broken heart.
And this is hard for, I think, a lot of people because, you know, people who didn't have a voice still don't now. And I think that's a shame.
While she is the only Hillary Clinton supporter we met who took a personal day to cope, we did find plenty of voters in downtown Decatur genuinely worried, some even fearful about Trump's new role as commander-in-chief.
I felt fear and sadness and a pit in my stomach of, oh, what do we do now?
Does he respect anybody else's, point of views, or he's going to be able to be a person that can, compromise or give and take? Like, what is he going to do?
At Thumbs Up Diner, voters were eager to finally hear from the Secretary of State late Wednesday morning. It had been hours since she'd conceded only to Trump.
Considering this is her second go-around, I wasn't sure quite how she would take it. I thought there might be a chance there'd be a little more emotion, but overall I thought she presented herself pretty well.
I agree with what you said about, this is not a time for division. Keep ourselves together and move on.
But some here say there's still more they need to hear from President-elect Trump.
Perhaps even an apology for the comments made and the people and groups of people whom he has hurt.
He'll mess up enough in office that it will turn the tide. I think it'll turn the pendulum back.
Now, I can tell you I did talk to a lot of some Clinton supporters today. Most of them said that it's going to take some time, they feel, for the country to sort of lick its wounds, if you would. But most of them also told me that they feel like ultimately they're going to be able to move forward, and they're all hoping for something good from a Trump presidency. We'll have more from the Clinton supporters coming up tonight at 6. We're reporting live from downtown Decatur. Portia Bruner, Fox 5 News.
All right, thank you, Portia. Well, President Obama has invited President-elect Trump to meet with him at the White House tomorrow. The president today vowed to work with Trump to ensure a smooth transition between their administrations.
It is no secret that the president-elect and I have some pretty significant differences. But remember, 8 years ago, President Bush and I had some pretty significant differences. But President Bush's team could not have been more professional or more gracious in making sure we had a smooth transition so that we could hit the ground running.
Well, the president has in the past called Trump unfit for the Oval Office, but President Obama says he was heartened by a message of unity and inclusion when he spoke with Trump on the phone last night. Well, it was a phone call that many people never expected. Many thought that President Obama would be congratulating Hillary Clinton instead.
But not. Fox 5 political analyst Matt Towery here, who predicted a Trump win. Matt, you were one of the few that got it right. What went into that feeling, and how did you come to that conclusion?
Well, first of all, let's note, if I'd gotten it wrong, we wouldn't be noting this, would we? Because I'd be hiding. Here's the deal. I polled for many years, involved in politics many years. I could see that these polls were not weighted correctly. I kept telling our viewers that day after day, not only here, but in the other stations like Florida and Tampa where I appear. I said they aren't right because they were underweighting mainly white male voters. And that's really where the difference was in this thing. You had a lot of white male voters who have not voted before. We had 14 million to 15 million new voters this year, above 2012, largest turnout in American history. It's pretty easy to figure out if you have that sort of tick up, it's going to change those numbers, and that's how it turned out.
You know, it's really important to note that the rural vote played a huge role.
It did, and that's where a lot of those voters who I'm talking about live. You know, they're not high-income individuals. They're hardworking. They don't participate. They were not excited by Mitt Romney. They thought he was too fancy, or John McCain, who they thought was a little too dour, and they had a lot of hope in Barack Obama. So they either didn't vote or they did vote the other way. This time, they said they'd had enough with the establishment, and this was an anti-establishment vote, and they turned out in big numbers. And if you saw that map last night we were working off of, all of that red
became
everywhere.
Increasingly red. We called it a wave, didn't we?
It was a wave, and it was a wave that went across areas that were rural. And so if you saw the map last night, folks, most of that map along the border, along the eastern seaboard and over to the west coast was blue. But everything in between was red, meaning Donald Trump was carrying those areas.
Let's talk about those alienated voters. Issues like immigration, abortion, gay marriage, transgender bathrooms. A lot of issues drove voters to the polls last night.
I think so, but I don't think it was the issues of LGBT or any of that as much as it was a general disdain for the establishment and for the fact that these people felt like government had just not treated them right. I did not see. I have not seen the degree of bias against, for example, the LGBT community in terms of what Trump has said.
Well, he mentioned them in his convention speech.
He's mentioned it many times, and I'm going to be very doubtful if he ends up being someone that they are upset with after it's over. The reason they were upset was because of the choice of Pence, because Pence is an individual who supports the same thing we saw here in Georgia.
Religious freedom issues.
Exactly, but Mike Pence is not going to be the president, and Donald Trump is. I'm going to be very surprised if that ends up being as big an issue as some people thought.
Well, after your accuracy last night, we'll be eager to hear your thoughts on who will compose the Trump cabinet. So we'll be talking about that in the upcoming days, I'm sure.
Absolutely. You got
Thank
it.
you, Matt.
All right,
nice job last night.
Thank you.
We'll still ahead.